episode 168 of 5 Drinks Through Midnight. In the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks, we try to wrap up before midnight. Today, we are headed to Ye Apothecary to talk to Derek Sandhaus, co-founder of Ming River Baijiu and author of Drunken China. But before we do, like and subscribe, hit the bells, the whistles, leave a comment if you like what we're doing. Really help us push the algorithm. Let's get started. Thanks so much for joining me. 5 drinks or midnight, 5 questions, 5 drinks, midnight, whatever comes first. Thank you so much for inviting us to Ye Apothecary. Make sure I got that right. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so bored.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year. This has been almost a full year in the making, so I'm so excited for this. We met at BCB and tails didn't work out, and then I'm so excited for this. So, I guess question one, what are we drinking first?
So we are just starting with right down the middle, a traditional strong aroma Baijiu made by my company, Ming River Sichuan Baijiu.
Okay.
So this is a 45% alcohol by volume, 100% sorghum mash bill, and it's fermented for 2 to 3 months in mud pits that are dug out of the ground. So this is the most traditional serving of Baijiu that you would get in the town where they make this in Luzhou in Sichuan, where you have about a 10 milliliter shot. Traditionally, this would be served with food at the dinner table at any kind of meeting or get together with friends. You'd have your plate of food. You would have a little tiny glass like this filled with Baijiu, and if this is for shooting. If you want to sip on something, you'd have a beer too.
Okay.
Today we're just sticking to the Baijiu.
All right. So do we shoot it?
Yeah. So the traditional cheers is gambe.
Okay.
Which means dry the glass.
All right.
So gambe. And then after shooting, I would hold it upside down like this, so you knew that it was in fact dry.
All right. We did good.
Yeah.
All right. That's fabulous, by the way.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, that is awesome. Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, question one is always an origin story.
Sure.
So, how does a guy that went to school for philosophy end up co-owner of a Baijiu company and author of one of the most influential cocktail books in China?
Well, I think the way to put it simply is I kind of moved to China after I graduated from university and ended up kind of getting lost in a certain way that I went there originally to teach English. I didn't want to move to China without a job. So I got a job off the internet. This would have been 2006. I talked to a woman named Joanna who interviewed me over the phone. And I moved out there with my then girlfriend, now wife. And we ended up both really loving Shanghai, where we moved, but neither one of us was a natural teacher. So we did that for about a year. She went into social media. I went into communications first. PR and then publishing, where I started taking what was then a hobby, which was doing a little bit of writing about Chinese history for magazines, and I became an editor of a publishing house that kind of focused on Chinese history.
Awesome.
And they ended up publishing a couple of history books that I wrote out there. And over the course of working there for a while, I started getting invited to a lot of business lunches. Where I would be served a little glass of Baijiu like this, and we would drink just an incredible amount of alcohol. So when you're drinking Baijiu, it's usually a by the bottle proposition, and whereas Ming River, what we just had is 45%. Most Baijiu in China is 52 or higher. So you do dozens of these shots. It's kind of I guess the way I would put it is it's like a trust fall experience. when you're doing business with someone for the first time, it's like really important that you get out to the restaurant and you drink a bunch of baijiu together.
Okay.
Because by getting intoxicated, by letting your guard down a little bit in front of them, you're demonstrating to each other that you're trustworthy.
Okay.
That you can let your guard down in front of these people. You're not hiding anything.
All right.
So, but I didn't know any of that at that time. I had no idea. I was just getting very drunk on something that was very strong and very flavorful.
Okay.
And I remember very distinctly, after one of these business meetings, I was going back to the office. I was pretty tipsy, and it was about 1 p.m. And I just knew I'm not getting any work done today. I'm going back into the office, but I'm not going to be doing anything. Yeah. So I'm just like, why? Why are we drinking like this? Yeah. Why are we having hard, very strong grain spirits in the middle of the day and then expected to go back to work? Why do they drink like this in China? So I got into one of those. This is where the philosophy major comes back in. I got into a like philosophical intoxicated state where I went from like, why did I just do that to like, why did I just do that? And I realized I didn't know. I'd been living in China probably about 3 years at that point. Okay. And I knew that when you went out to restaurants, there were constantly people drinking bottle after bottle of baijiu, some of them to a state of wild insobriety. But I wasn't really drinking baijiu. Most people I knew who weren't from China weren't drinking baijiu. And it just kind of clicked. Like, you have this local drinking culture and you have this international drinking culture, and they're not connected. Okay. So how did this separate, distinctly Chinese thing start? And I thought, like, there's probably a book in here. Like, there is a deep drinking culture that I don't know anything about, and I bet it would be a fun thing to learn about. And hopefully, if I did it right, a couple good stories would pop up along the way. And so this became first a book I published in 2014 called Baijiu, The Essential Guide to Chinese Spirits, which was just a very straight down the middle consumer guide to Chinese alcohol. And later, the book that I wanted to write originally was one called Drunken China. That was both the story of how the Chinese started making baijiu and how Chinese drinking culture developed over many thousands of years, and also mixed in there my stories traveling around the country and learning all about it.
Awesome.
So that is the basic version of how I got into baijiu, but a lot's happened since then. Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. Were you a big baijiu fan, like, other than like that meeting? Like, is there, like, did you know about the spirit, were you a fan of it? Because again, Westerners kind of have like it's almost kind of like a moonshine, if you will, here. Like, you would get moonshine, like it's one of those things that like someone gives you a shot of moonshine, you're gonna get fucked up and go blind, which isn't true. But were you familiar with baijiu? And did you like it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the whole like moonshine reputation as being like a real backwoods kind of drink was a reputation that baijiu had in China up until like the mid 20th century. So there is definitely some overlap there between how we view it, but like in terms of how I viewed baijiu at the time that I decided that I was going to learn more about it, my opinion was completely different. It was much like the stereotypical view that you just reiterated there, which is I had it, I think, the first time at a party at someone's house right after I moved to Shanghai. There was a guy from Philadelphia who had been in China longer than I had, so at that point he'd been there for 6 months and I had just showed up. But he wanted to, give me a rude introduction to Chinese drinking.
Gotcha.
So he bought the cheapest bottle he could find at the convenience store on the corner on the way to the party, and then just, started passing it around, telling everyone, like, you should try this. This is Chinese alcohol. And I tried it, I was like, ooh, geez, this is rough stuff. I don't think it's for me. But I didn't know anything about it. And I think one of the things that is really important to say right up front about Baijiu and helps understand how you could both have a very negative experience with it initially and later develop an appreciation for it is that Baijiu isn't one drink. Baijiu is a term that literally means white alcohol, but in terms of what it means, it's any traditional spirit made in China.
All right.
All Baijius have a few things in common. One, they're all made from grain. Two, they're fermented using a Chinese technique called chu, which uses wild yeast and other microorganisms in the air to break down the grains into alcohol. And the third thing that they have in common is that they're all have no added flavor.
Okay.
So it's just going to be a white grain spirit that's had nothing added to it. You can add stuff to your Baijiu later and infuse it and make kind of like the local equivalent of a gin.
Okay.
But to be called a Baijiu, those three things have to be the case.
Okay.
So there's about 12 to 15, depending on how you're categorizing it, different spirits in China that are all called Baijiu, and they can be very different from one another.
Gotcha.
Some are very mild and mellow, more on the vodka end of the spectrum. Some of them are just crazy intense, like the peatiest scotch you've ever had. And those things are not made necessarily in the same way with the same ingredients, but they're all called Baijiu. So it's like a family. So you can have the really low end rough stuff and be like, ooh, God. But you can also, after you taste a bunch of it, you can go around the different styles of Baijiu and start finding things that are this one's a little more to my taste, or this one's even better, or this is even worse. You through the process of exploring Baijiu are going to find tremendous diversity within the category.
Awesome. So then I guess just our last follow-up, or just what made you want to start a Baijiu company then?
So this happened really organically. So Ming River was the partnership between me, a bar in China, and the oldest distillery in China.
Okay.
So those are the three major factors, and the way it came about is Luzhou Lajiao is the distillery. They've been making this style of Baijiu longer than anyone else.
Okay.
And there's parts of their distillery that have been continuously used since 1573, which is crazy. So they knew how to make this Baijiu really, really well. But what was happening is in 2014, I published my first book on Baijiu. And I'd been blogging about Baijiu for a few years before that. So I kind of by accident, I was the only person really writing about Baijiu in English at the time.
Okay.
So I would get business people both from China and from other countries that were interested in getting into Baijiu that were coming to me and saying, you're writing about Baijiu for new audiences, you seem to understand this industry, can we work with you to help create products either to be exported out of China or to bring non-Chinese products into China?
Okay.
And I didn't really have much of a business background, but I was happy to help out, and I did some consulting work for other Baijiu brands that launched outside of China. Meanwhile, I met this guy, Bill, and his business partner, Matthias, who were living in Beijing and were in the process of opening a bar when I was giving a book talk about Baijiu in Beijing, and they came and they were just thinking about making just a normal Western style bar. But they said, there's all of these cool different Baijius. We did a flight of different styles of Baijiu, and they hadn't realized that there was this diversity within the category. So they said, we're just going to open a normal bar, but this is cool. We're in China. There isn't really a place you can go in Beijing if you want to try 5 different styles of Baijiu, because the drinking style locally is all by the bottle. So it's really hard to
Yeah.
work your way through 5 bottles in the
Yeah.
course of a night. But if they opened a bar that both had cocktails and made with Baijiu and tasting flights, then this would be a really good way to introduce people to Baijiu for the first time and kind of showcase the diversity of this as a spirits category. So they went ahead and opened this bar, and meanwhile I moved away from China.
Okay.
So I was living, this would have been like 2015,
Okay.
I was living in Argentina.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, no, it was great, but not a lot of Baijiu to be had in Argentina.
Yep.
So I would get these requests saying, can you help us source Baijiu, or we want to do this, that, and the other. And I didn't have, the ability to travel easily to China. So I reached back out to these guys, and we decided we would start a consulting company, because on their side of the thing, they were having people from Chinese distilleries show up with business, in a business suit with the briefcases to this back alley bar with probably 10 seats in it, and say you've got new audiences drinking Baijiu here at your bar. You have younger people, whereas most Baijiu drinkers tend to be on the older side. You have women drinking Baijiu, whereas most Baijiu drinkers in China tend to be men. I think Baijiu, at least at the time, had very much kind of the same reputation that Scotch might have in the Western business set, where it's seen as something this is something old dudes smoking cigars might sit around and drink. Whereas the younger demographics were not really touching the stuff so much. So they said, you're attracting markets that we want to get into, so let's work together. And so they were looking to consult. I was looking for other ways that I could continue consulting in China. So we joined forces.
Nice.
But what happened very soon after we started a consultancy was Luzhou Laojiao, the distillery we would end up working with long term, approached us and said, we've been kicking around this idea of making a Baijiu that would be specifically for international markets.
Okay.
Something that could be used to introduce the rest of the world to Baijiu, because yes, Baijiu is the most popular spirit in the world. I should just say that right up front.
Okay.
They make 7 billion liters of it in China every single year. It's more valuable than any other category of spirits. There's more volume of Baijiu that's produced and sold every year than whiskey, vodka, tequila, rum, all put together.
Okay.
But 99% of that is being consumed in China. And it's really important to Chinese distilleries for this to become more of an international spirit that people understand and appreciate. So that brings us back to this conversation with the distillery, where they said, we've wanted to make a brand for a long time, but we know how to make Baijiu, but we don't know how to sell it to people in other countries who aren't coming from the same cultural background that we have. So they said, we think your team is probably the best position. You already have a reputation of introducing new people to Baijiu, so let's work together. And it took about 2 years of kind of R&D, developing the product, getting the specific blend that's used in Ming River right, and coming up with a plan to release it in new audiences. And that was very heavily focused, at least initially, on education, because we knew nobody knows what this is in the places we're trying to sell it. So a big part of our operation has always been, how do we quickly and effectively introduce people to the spirit?
Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll convert some followers today. So, but
should we get the second?
I was gonna say, I mean, that's question 1. So let's move on then. Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
Okay, so what we're drinking now is kind of the top level product that is made at the distillery that makes Ming River. So this is what's called 1573. And what's interesting about this particular Baijiu in the world of Baijiu is that all of the Baijiu that's made at our distillery is fermented in mud pits that are dug out of the ground. and mash that is 80% recycled into the next batch.
All right.
So it kind of works like a sourdough starter, where every batch you're feeding a little bit of fresh grain into the mash.
All right.
But the mash itself lives forever.
Okay. Awesome.
So what's cool is by doing it this way over and over again, the mud walls of the pits where you're performing the fermentation start absorbing the chemicals from the fermentation process and become part of the fermentation process. Okay. And these particular pits where this baijiu is made contain baijiu that's fermented in pits that were first used in 1573. So this is made with a mash that was alive in the time of William Shakespeare.
Wow.
So it's a really...
That's awesome.
It's a really cool product, very unusual, and probably a nice capstone to the introduction I was telling you about how I got into baijiu, because this particular baijiu is the baijiu that made me fall in love with baijiu as a category.
Okay.
Because I was at a diplomatic, like, Lunar New Year's party. This would have been 2012.
All right.
My wife is a diplomat, and we moved to Sichuan, where this style of baijiu comes from. And this particular baijiu we were at, because it was a diplomatic event, I was at a table with a bunch of European, like, consul generals, high-ranking diplomats, and I just started researching baijiu, so I knew just enough to be dangerous.
Right.
Where I saw there was a bottle of this particular baijiu sitting in the center of all of the tables, and none of the foreigners were touching it because they didn't know what it was, they weren't baijiu drinkers. It was 11 a.m., whatever. But I knew that in the middle of this table was one of the best baijius in all of China, and something that I really couldn't afford to buy for myself. So I cracked it open and just started having at it, and was like...
As one should, right?
It was the first time that I tasted a baijiu where I was saying, like, this is good. This isn't just good for a baijiu. This is a spirit that stands up to anything I've ever tried in any spirits category. So it's a really special drink. It's a little bit higher. I think it's 52% alcohol by volume in terms of the strength. And you're going to get a lot more like umami notes, whereas Ming River is more dominated by pineapple notes.
Okay.
So, Gambay.
Oh, damn. Ooh, that is good.
Yeah.
That is
really complex. You get some like honey notes as well. Yeah, it's really special stuff.
Wow. With the recipe, like you said, like it's almost like a sourdough starter. Do you give it off to like other distilleries to like start their own, or is it just kept directly?
No, they keep it. They always have the same pit married to the same mash, so they're developing together like a symbiotic relationship over time. And the 20% that they're adding is also cycled out every time as well, because the pits that like hold this grain holds about 20 to 30 tons of grain.
Oh shit!
So you take it off like from top to bottom, a layer at a time. The top part of the pit is the driest, so that's what gets cycled out. After it's distilled, it's fed to pigs. Okay. And then they mix in fresh grains with the lower levels and distill that. They use steam to distill, so they're actually like steaming the grains they've just added at the same time that they're distilling the fermented grains. So yeah.
Fuck, it's
fun stuff.
That is awesome. That is so cool. Like that was so good. Like smart man for cracking that. You can't let that sit at the table. That is that is awesome. So question 2. How do you feel that the perception of baijiu has changed since you started writing about it?
I think the perception of baijiu has changed in a couple of ways. I think when I started writing about baijiu was really much seen as a completely like inaccessible drink, that there would never be any place for it. And this cut both ways. I remember in 2011 when I first started talking to Chinese distilleries about baijiu, they would say, yeah, you can come by our distillery and we'll show you how we make it, but like, foreigners don't drink baijiu, so you're wasting your time. We sell all of our baijiu here in China. Chinese people drink it, non-Chinese people don't drink it. So I think that's that perception's changed a lot, and part of that is I think there's a growing understanding of it, not just from like the work that we're doing with Ming River, but I know that there's been a bigger focus on incorporating Baijiu into mainstream alcohol, like educational institutes and spirits institutions, spirits competitions rather.
Okay.
Where you have organizations like WSET that added Baijiu and other Asian spirits to their like level 3 spirits course. That has made people seek it out when they wouldn't. I know like Bar 5 Day here in the US has focused on Baijiu for a long time and making sure people understand the category a little bit better. Just a gradual accumulation of things like that over the years. But also I think the more people have had exposure to Baijiu, they realize it's not just a weird moonshine drink like we were talking about before, but this is something that has a lot of complexity, it has a lot of depth, and it also has flavor profiles that aren't found in other spirits, particularly like those umami notes, the like more like sesame, blue cheese, mushroomy kind of things that you get on the back end of this Baijiu certainly, but like there's a Baijiu Guizhou Maotai that's very popular. It's what's called a sauce aroma Baijiu that's just like overwhelmingly umami. You get flavors with Baijiu that you just can't get with other things. So if you are running a serious cocktail spirits education program, if you're missing out on the most popular spirit in the planet, you can't really consider yourself much of a completist.
Gotcha.
I think. And I think people are just like more into Chinese flavors in a way that they weren't 10 years ago. I mean, New York's a special example in that you have everything and kind of always have had, but definitely there's more of an understanding that Chinese food isn't just, General Tso's chicken, Kung Pao chicken, that there is regionality and like levels of sophistication in Chinese cuisine that people are appreciating, and more importantly, people are willing to spend money for in a way that they used to only be able to, spend like cheap combo meals at the Chinese restaurant. There's a growing understanding of these flavors, and there's a saying in China that like, you can't set the table without alcohol. So there's very much a notion in Chinese cuisine that alcohol, and in the case of modern times, that would mean Baijiu, has to be at the table as a complementary flavor. So I think just a growing sophistication in the consumer's understanding of Chinese food and a willingness of these places that are serving more complex Chinese flavors that Baijiu should be there. Baijiu has a place, Baijiu belongs in that setting.
Is there like would there be a certain meal that you would have this specific style with, or?
So as a general rule of thumb, the different styles of Baijiu all come from different regions of China, and the flavors that they complement are the flavors of the food from that region. So Ming River Baijiu, like I was saying, and 1573, like we just had here, these are both what's called strong aroma Baijius, and strong aroma Baijius come from Sichuan. So Sichuanese food is very spicy. Has a lot of chili, raw ginger, raw garlic, has a lot of the Sichuan peppercorn, that like kind of numbing flavor in your mouth. So this is a very like bright, fruity, sweet Baijiu that's meant to kind of coat your mouth and make you able to like wolf down spicy food. And also the spiciness of the food brings out the complexity in the drink. So it'll help you better appreciate like both like that pineapple note. There's like a very like floral, like star anise note in the middle of it, and there's also this kind of cheesy note at the end, that umami note that I'm talking about, and all of those go amazingly with spice.
Awesome. What would you consider like one of the biggest hurdles to get Baijiu, like for Westerners to enjoy Baijiu?
I think there's a few obstacles. The first is, I guess the way I would put it is like it's basically accessibility.
Okay.
And I mean that in a couple of different ways. One is before we started selling our baijiu, it was almost impossible to find baijiu in mainstream outlets in the United States. So very few liquor stores in the United States will carry even one baijiu outside of like Chinatown liquor stores in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, places like that. So it just, there wasn't a place to try it if you wanted to for most people outside of major cities. The second thing is just, in terms of accessibility, is almost all baijiu labels are written in Chinese.
Okay.
So if you don't speak the Chinese language, it's almost impossible to tell like what is in that box that's on the shelf.
Yeah, what's good.
And what's inside it. What style of baijiu is it? How strong is it? Who makes it? Even if you just take a blind gamble and buy a box not knowing what the Chinese on the label says, and you like it, how are you supposed to find out information about that? Like, you won't know what even to call that brand of baijiu. So that was one of the reasons why when we made Ming River, one of the first things we did is said, yes, we would like there to be a Chinese name, but we would like it to be a Chinese name that someone who doesn't speak Chinese can pronounce, can remember, can find later, and tell their friends about.
Awesome. Well, there we go. That's question 2. Question 3, drink 3. What are we drinking?
This is a Plum Theory. This is a whiskey baijiu-based cocktail with
Berry, chrysanthemum, baijiu, vermouth, empirical plum, I suppose. It's a really good. I don't know if you guys heard of empirical.
Oh, yeah,
They do great, cool things.
We're down for it. So
Cheers.
cheers.
Ooh, that's nice.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That is.
Now we're getting into it.
Yep. That is dangerous and really damn good. That is. Oh, yeah. That sesame with that. That is. Oh, yeah.
Somehow it tastes like a glass of wine.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
I'm not mad about
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
Nice drink.
Oh. Alright, so question 3.
Yep.
A little bit of a future telling thing, but where do you see you guys, Ming River, in 10 years, and where do you see Baijiu in 10 years? Will it become Western popular, or like what's next, and where do you see yourselves in the future?
I mean, I've long said, so I've blown past this deadline, but I used to tell people I wanted to see Baijiu in 10 years where mezcal was.
Okay.
Like 10 years ago.
All right. No, I get it.
Like, I want it to be something that there is a bit of appreciation for around the world.
Yep.
Still a little more under the radar, but what I think really has to change in order for Baijiu to achieve that trajectory is we need more players in the market.
Okay.
It's a weird thing to say that I want more competitors.
Sure.
I want more competitors. I want there to be more baijiu distilleries from around China making different styles of baijiu and selling those into the US, because it's really hard for people to appreciate the complexity and diversity of the category if the only thing they can find at the liquor store is Ming River. Like, I don't want there to be one bottle of baijiu on a shelf. I want there to be a shelf of baijiu.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think that's the next thing.
Okay.
So yeah, I do think that baijiu as a style of spirit is going to be something that will catch on. Not just because, it's got all of this volume and money behind it from China. Yes, that I think is going to help, but that's not going to be the reason that it's successful.
Yep.
I think the reason that baijiu will ultimately become a popular global spirit is because it's good.
Okay.
Like, it is something that is very well made, that is very unique to what it is and where it comes from, and it's something that's made with a lot of care. So, in the same way that I think any good spirit will eventually find an audience, I think Baijiu will as well. There's just way too much of it that is good for it to stay hidden.
Okay. Not looking for industry secrets or anything along those lines.
Yeah, sure.
But what's next for you guys? Like, what's next for Ming River? Like, more about, like, again, you said that you're on a little bit lower of the proof spectrum than normal Baijiu. Like, would you go, just going to go higher? Is there going to be like a cast strength, if you will? Or is there, I mean, what's next? Just
So, yeah.
what you can tell us.
Well, the reason we got to 45% alcohol by volume is because our distillery in China does most of its brands in two strengths. They have a 38 and a 52.
Okay.
And we are just right down the middle.
All right.
So we figured at that strength, it's more affordable than the 52% in terms of just the cost of bringing it over here and selling it. But it's also something that it's strong enough that you can not lose it in a cocktail that is actually going to bring something to the table. You will taste it, you will feel it.
Yep.
But it's also not so weak that it's going to... it's neither too weak or too strong that you're not going to want to drink it in the more traditional way, the shooting alongside food. So we wanted it consciously to be something that could be used in both the bar or at the dinner table.
Okay.
And I think over time we do want to introduce it more into the traditional consumption setting. But in terms of what, perfect world, I could get everyone who has to agree to everything to sign off on it. I think we want to do a range of Baijius. If money was no obstacle, I would want to release a couple of different styles of Baijiu under the Ming River label. Probably also different strengths. What we're trying right now is a very good, I would say, like mid-range Baijiu in the Chinese context. It's at that price point, which is under $50, which you can still get a lot of really great value in Baijiu, especially in China. But there's a lot of room to go up. If you are someone that is, a Baijiu connoisseur and are looking for something closer to what we tried with the 1573 range.
I was going to ask you, like, how expensive was that? Like,
so in China, the 1573 sells for about $200 a bottle.
Okay.
And the bottles are usually 500 milliliters, not 750.
Okay.
So, it's several times more expensive to produce and sell than Ming River is. It would be great if we had built up enough reputation and there was demand for a better Baijiu in the market. But for now, in terms of getting bartenders to work with it, price is really the number one thing that we have to check. Of course, quality as well. But before we can introduce the market to something really fancy, we need to make sure that the demand is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. That's question 3. So, cheers.
Cheers. All right.
Question 4, drink 4. What are we drinking?
I believe it's called Key Symphony.
Excellent.
Empirical Symphony with Thai basil in it.
Very nice.
There's some tomato in there as well. There's
yeah.
Baijiu, obviously.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's give it a shot. Okay.
All right. No, I like that.
I do too.
He was saying that with the salt and the sugar, and you definitely get that.
That tomato came in there at the end.
Yep.
I wasn't quite expecting it. I like that.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's almost like a tomato sour. So
A little bit, yeah. Like
okay, yeah,
like a
Baijiu, we're getting weird. We really go all the way there.
Fuck, okay. That's a weird one, but I like that. I really
like
do.
it too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you sorry, hang on, let's start that over. Very confused because the tomato just hit and I went, wow, It's almost like a weird cold soup, like with the tomato.
Yeah.
Like the sweet, the salty, the like.
I think we've had like gazpacho, the cocktail.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Like that tomato hit me at the end, and I was just like, everything just went out the window. But I mean, how? Not question 4, but like, how do you eat, like to shoot it traditionally, or have you more embraced into the cocktail kind of thing?
Well, naturally, most drinkers in the United States don't shoot a lot of neat spirits.
Right.
So we knew if we were gonna survive selling Baijiu in the United States that we would have to find ways to use it in cocktails. Luckily, I think strong aroma Baijiu works really well in a cocktail because it's got that like sweetness, that pineapple sweetness. It's got that kind of anise, like floral note, and it's got like that kind of funky umami note that
Gotcha.
I keep talking about. So in a cocktail, it works a lot like a funkier rum.
Yeah.
Something like a rum agricole or like a high ester pot distilled Jamaican rum. So works incredibly well in that like tiki style application. Daiquiris, pina coladas, painkillers, stuff like that.
Oh.
It's like delicious. And also, because Baijiu is very much its own thing, you can make all those drinks and they'll work fine, but like they're going to be Baijiu drinks. You will know that they're made with Baijiu instead of rum. So that's really cool. You can also lean into that more of that kind of floral middle note, the anise, like licoricey note in the middle, and that works well in more of like the stirred direction with like amaros and other bitter ingredients. So I guess amari would be the plural.
Sure.
If I've got my Italian
Yeah.
right, I'm more of a Chinese speaker.
Yeah.
But
I can barely speak English, so it's fine. I'll go with you.
I hear that. You know, we're on drink 4. So,
Yeah.
Well, please give me some grace there.
Yeah. No word. Yeah.
And I like all of those. I drink Baijiu cocktails pretty much every week when I'm traveling for work,
All right.
several times a day. And I do really like it. People are doing some of the most creative stuff. And because it has that umami note, it actually works really well in savory cocktails. Stuff that's more like in a food direction. We're actually like working on like a food-inspired cocktail competition right now.
Okay.
Where people are making drinks like everything from like green curry to like a Chicago hot dog.
All right.
To, like,
Nice.
all sorts of crazy drinks. Pho, you know.
All right. Yeah.
Whatever. There's a lot of different directions you can go. I do think tiki is probably the easiest and most logical, but the other cool thing is though, because Baijiu is a category of spirits and they're very different, you can use Baijius in different ways. So I've been to a lot of bars over the years that have bar programs that are built around Baijius, and we'll be using 4 or 5 different styles of Baijiu, whereas like a light aroma Baijiu is like a northern Baijiu, and it's a lot drier.
Okay.
It doesn't have that same kind of the tropical notes to it, and it actually works a lot like a grappa, or like a really like grassy mezcal.
Okay.
It also has some smokiness to it, so you can do completely different cocktails with like a light aroma than you can a strong aroma. And a sauce aroma Baijiu is like very umami and it has sesame notes, so you can mix that maybe with like some milk and like turn it into more of like a desserty, like chocolatey cocktail.
All right.
There's kind of unlimited potential, but the really cool thing about Baijiu in the cocktail application is that you're kind of flying without a map.
Yeah.
There's not, you know, in the same way that when you're working with whiskey in a cocktail, you're like, what are the good whiskey cocktails?
Right.
Well, you got a paper plane, you've got an old fashioned, you got a Manhattan. No, there's no canonical Baijiu cocktails. Anyone who is making something with Baijiu is probably making it for the first time.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely an opportunity that, at least I keep telling bartenders, there's an opportunity to make that first, Baijiu cocktail that everyone knows.
Exactly.
We just have to crack the code.
Yeah. Well, again, you said a Baijiu painkiller, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I gotta go home and make that. Like that's That is, honestly, that sounds fucking amazing. But, alright, so question 4, I've got to read it here real quick. Your book, Drunk in China, explores how Baijiu shaped Chinese drinking culture. What's one aspect of Baijiu culture that Western audiences have to embrace?
There's a few different directions I could go with that question. One is, just like I was saying before, that there's not like a distinction in Chinese culture between like food and wine.
Right.
It's like food and wine are two parts of the same thing.
Right.
And you want to have them together all the time. And it's not that like this is a wine that pairs with the food. This is also a food that pairs with the wine.
Yeah.
If that makes
No,
sense.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. You nailed it. Like, we're sitting down for dinner. Of course, there's alcohol. Like, there's like, I love that kind of thing. Like, I think that's kind of amazing because.
So yeah, like I think the whole viewing alcohol as part of a cuisine is something that we could definitely benefit from a lot outside of China, because you also have this situation where I think it's the same thing with most Western alcohols. They mostly grew out of like very agrarian traditions where like farmers will be growing the food and turning some of that food into spirits or wines or beers or whatever. But these are things that are cultivating the same taste. They, they grow together, go together. That old chestnut. But the thing. So that's one thing that I think we could gain from. But I think the thing that's always really impressed me about Chinese drinking culture, and is both the best and the worst thing about it at the same time, is Chinese attitudes towards intoxication. Whereas I'm sure it comes from a religious place, but definitely in Europe and America, there's a notion that like, yes, we're going to go out to the bar and drink, but it's somehow shameful to be visibly intoxicated. That this notion that we view drinking as like sophisticated, but the effects of drinking is somehow taboo. Which is just really weird.
Yep.
Really, really weird. And in China, it's definitely not that way, because drinking is viewed as a social like obligation and something that, if you're going out to a business meeting, you might be asked to like drink a bottle of Baijiu with your coworkers. And so it's not uncommon on the streets of China, like 8 p.m., to see someone fall down drunk, passing out on the side of the road. And the reaction is not the same that you would have if we saw that, later tonight on the streets of New York. You wouldn't say like, oh my gosh, what a disgrace, they need to get their shit together. You would say like, oh, there goes a successful person. He's been out doing business tonight.
Well, I was going to say, isn't it almost like a badge of honor to get really hammered? Because that meant, like, especially as like a youngster, that meant that you were probably out drinking with your boss and you did something beneficial, and or like you said, you were out doing business, so therefore. And I'm not at all encouraging people to drink in like an irresponsible way. We're all about drinking responsibly.
Or to like say like, oh, you should go out and get hammered on Baijiu. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying like, we have to understand like in the alcohol industry, we are dealing with powerful psychoactive substances, and sometimes they affect you. And not to like shy away or, to shame people for doing the thing we're asking them to do all the time, to please like go out and drink with us. But just have some grace and, understand that we are connected and that we have an obligation to take care of each other and make sure that everyone gets home safe and has water if they need water, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that is definitely... that is the best part of it, the part that like, we're not ashamed to like let our guard down and to have a good time with our friends and to understand that, sometimes drinking will have an effect on you. Sure. But the negative side of that is very much that Because it is a social obligation, people often feel obligated to drink a lot more than they would like to. And, you know, you can have some very serious health problems. So, like, I definitely, you know, am conscious that this is a double-edged sword, and it's not something that you should just do, you know, to make someone else happy. But at the same time, you know, like, it's always been deeply weird to me that outside of China, people don't acknowledge that, like, drunkenness sometimes results from drinking.
I drink this. Oh shit, I'm hammered. What? How'd that happen?
Oh, how could you?
Are there rules, kind of like with soju and stuff? So like when you are sitting down at like doing. Like are there like for example, like if your elder picks up and drink, do you have to drink? Like is there like rules when it comes to drinking baijiu? Like what are those rules? Like,
the Chinese have been drinking and making alcohol on purpose, not just because like a fruit fell off the tree and rotted, for at least 9,000 years. And over that time, initially it was mostly in religious rituals. Later, it became more of a social function. But at least in the oldest religious rituals, you would be drinking to show respect or to offer tribute to like a god or a spirit. And later, over time, as Chinese culture became more secular, those rituals like evolved into like a toasting ritual where I'm toasting another person, not I'm making an offering to you of alcohol. That's kind of the origins of Chinese drinking rituals, but at least in the most ancient forms, and particularly in the most influential philosophy in China, Confucianism. Confucianism was a philosophy that basically said if everyone plays their part and does their role, society will function better. And this means that there's rules and different relationships between people that have to be respected. So in the drinking context, what this means is that if I am the host, like I am the ruler, I am the king of this, or emperor of this particular outing, and my responsibility is to provide for the guests, the people. So if I am hosting a drinking session, my goal is to provide all of my guests, all of the food and alcohol that they can possibly handle. And the guest's reciprocal responsibility is to drink when I tell them to drink. So
you could be an evil fuck if you really wanted to be. Like.
Yes, without getting too deeply into history, there was in ancient China, rulers had like essentially like MCs at their drinking sessions who would tell people you must drink now. And supposedly it was punishable by death if you didn't drink.
Oh shit! Okay.
Nothing is that ridiculous, but there is still definitely a bit of a social pressure element to drinking in China today. And the other big influence on Chinese drinking is Taoism, and Taoism is a philosophy very much of like reversion to a natural state, like if we all walk in the woods, you know, we'll be more like animals. You know,
feel the nature.
Past the bong man. But in the drinking culture of China, this is a philosophy in which the Taoists are very famous for being drunk all the time. Because they thought like intoxication was a means by which you could like hasten enlightenment, and that by losing your inhibitions you would be more true to your natural state. So you have these kind of like push and pull of Chinese drinking culture where the Confucian tradition has you like following rules and paying attention to like who's doing what when and not embarrassing anyone, and the Taoist tradition is like, well, we gotta go all the way. So today you have a drinking session that is both very ordered. There are like rules, like you know, as you were saying, like an older person can make a younger person drink. Not like basically someone with more social status than you
Gotcha.
can make you drink.
All right.
Usually because they're buying the drinks, so you've got to kind of humor them a little
Gotcha.
bit. But there's also different rules about when you're like how you serve, and that's why I brought these shot glasses here. So if you're at the table, your obligation is to like pour for the person
Gotcha.
next to you. You never want them to have an empty glass.
Gotcha.
So you would like, this is water, but just by means of demonstration, I would fill it up like that, where it's literally overflowing to the top of the brim, because that is considered a polite pour.
Just spill
even if you're spilling, because the idea is like I am not skimping. You are getting maximum Baijiu right now. And the person receiving the drink would tap the table a couple of times with 2 fingers. This is a symbolic of like bowing your head on the ground before them as in supplication for their generosity. You would also never drink without first making a toast.
Okay.
So it's a shooting drink, but it always needs to be preceded by, you have to give a reason for why you're drinking.
Okay.
So I would say, Tim, thanks for inviting me out today. I'm so glad that we're drinking together. I wish you good health, good fortune. And then we might say Ganbei, and you would clink glasses, but there's rules in the clinking as well. So if your glass is here and my glass is here, if I want to show you respect, I want the lip of my glass to go underneath the lip of your glass.
Okay.
Because that shows that I am saying you're higher status than I am.
Ah.
But you will also want to do this to show me that I'm a higher status than you. So you'll be going down and we'll be like racing down, and sometimes you will end up clinking glasses on the floor to show that you both went all the way.
All right. I was going to say, that's probably going to give me, like, as the night goes on, that's going to be really hard, because the more drunk you are, like, trying to be like, oh, now I'm on the floor. Like,
exactly. So it's both a very, like, regulated but also raucous encounter, where we're all following rules that we all know, but we're also trying to get to the bottom of that bottle of Baijiu.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fuck, that's awesome. Well, there we go. That's question 4. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Question 5, drink 5, last drink of the night. What are we drinking?
We're having a medicinal Negroni with some tangerine gin, some Baijiu, sweet vermouth, and Campari.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah,
oh, that's good. That's
that tangerine with the
yeah.
Fuck.
That'll get your New Year off to the right.
Yeah, exactly. That you can't be happy after that one. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, I'm halfway to the air of the horse with that one.
All right. So question 5.
Let's do it.
Comes down to the Whiskey Wednesday coin.
Okay, Whiskey Wednesday.
You can flip it. You can spin it. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to answer. The coin will give us the answer.
Okay, we've got fuck no on one side.
And fuck yeah on the other.
Fuck yeah on the other, okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Got our bases covered.
There we go. So, Baijiu culture is all about toasts and rounds. One sip is never just one sip. Is Baijiu the only drink where just one sip can turn into an all-night adventure?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Because the one sip of Baijiu is a commitment.
Yep.
And that commitment is to keep drinking until everyone else stops.
Yeah.
So what I always tell people is when they say like, oh my gosh, I don't drink that much, I don't know if I can go to China and engage in a Baijiu drinking session. I said like, that's fine, just tell them you don't drink. And so it's really an all or nothing thing.
Yep.
No Baijiu means no Baijiu.
Yep.
But one sip of Baijiu means I have signed the contract and committed to continue drinking Baijiu with everyone for the rest of the night. There are pluses and minuses to this approach. The plus is that you'll probably have a pretty good time with these people, and the Baijiu drinking session is very unique in that it's not a sipping drink. every time someone makes a toast with you, it's a reciprocal obligation. When they toast you, you have an obligation before the meal's over to toast them back. But also, it means that you're always going to be drinking with someone else. Yeah, I can't let you drink alone.
Oh,
You're always going to be drinking with someone else, but that also means that the night is going to be like going in the same direction, with everyone like leaning in the same direction all at once. So the goal that you're aiming for with a Baijiu drinking session is what they call in Sichuan "re" now, which means hot and loud. You want, basically, as you are taking the shots with each other, everyone's like temperature is going up gradually. And the room is getting louder, and there's like steam coming off of the food, and it just gets more and more lively and fun and festive, and it's a very different experience from like drinking a cocktail at a bar in the West, where, you know, you show up, everyone in the room is in a different place in terms of their energy level, in terms of their sobriety. And maybe one person is sipping on a beer, another person's having like a Negroni, something real boozy, and you're all going to a different place, stopping at different places, and you don't have the same synchronicity that you're getting with a Baijiu drinking session. So that's really fun. But you might, for example, have a meeting at 9 a.m. the next morning. You might have to get groceries or something. So, it's really one of those devil's bargains where if you take the first shot of Baijiu, you have essentially sold your soul to Baijiu for the night and cannot exit the situation without some damage to your personal reputation.
very nice.
That being said, I will again say, one should not drink beyond the point at which one is comfortable drinking.
Yes.
And I would never expect someone to keep drinking Baijiu beyond the point that they were having a good time drinking Baijiu.
I agree. We're all about drinking responsibly.
Yes, we will say that once again. But you're also, maybe we're landing in a place where I can say, you asked me before what my favorite way of drinking Baijiu is, and while I do like the shot experience that we just described over food with friends, I think it's a pretty unique drinking experience, and one that most people I've done it with have a pretty good time doing.
Awesome.
And I do like the cocktails that we're having right now. This is another great way to consume Baijiu, but my very favorite is probably also from the more traditional setting, which is like double fisting with neat Baijiu and a beer.
Okay.
This is usually done at restaurants in China because the Baijiu is something that you have to shoot, but you can't like sip it. You can't just like, I feel like drinking more, I'm going to sip the Baijiu. That has to be done as a shot with someone else.
Gotcha.
But if you've got the beer next to it, then you have something you can sip on throughout the meal. You've got the, like the business and the pleasure.
It's the moment.
Exactly. You get both experiences at once when you've got the beer with the Baijiu. So
awesome.
Love the Baijiu Boilermaker, or what we call a double happiness.
Okay, awesome. Well, there we go. That is 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I had such an amazing time.
I had a great time too.
Until we can drink together again. So, cheers to you.
Cheers, Gabe.
Gabe.